Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 1's question and answer session with the creators and writers of Hidden Oaks. I'm your host, Robin, the voice of Ellie and of Mira. Here with me, I have creators and writers Patrick Marsh, Owen Swerkstrom, and Robert Daun. We also have Dave, music aficionado and composer extraordinaire. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
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 All right, before we dive into any of the questions, let's give a little disclaimer. If you have not finished listening to Season 1 in its entirety, you may hear some spoilers during this episode. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but just so you know, you've been warned.
That was a pretty intense notebook drop.
That was.
Yep.
That was to punctuate the warning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like stomping on the ground, but instead a
Yeah.
notebook drop.
I like that.
That is a warning.
All right, question 1, gentlemen. Give me some of your general inspiration behind Hidden Oaks. Someone said they had an X-Files feel. So what were your influences and your inspirations? Don't all go at once, though.
Can you guys hear that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Heard the
okay.
question. I don't know how to answer, and I think Patrick probably ought to first anyway.
Yeah, I've been writing about monsters for a while now, but my inspiration for Hidden Oaks, I wanted to create a really good monster that deals with the aspect of containment. And I had been looking for a setting for it, and I had tried other settings, including like space and like apocalyptic settings and stuff. Nothing really seemed to fit. But when I started floating the idea of Hidden Oaks to Bob, we kind of settled on the idea of a monster in the suburbs, which is kind of what we're going for, which is what we're doing with Hidden Oaks. But in terms of inspirations for that, they're all over the map for me. X-Files is one of them. I grew up watching the X-Files from behind my parents' couch because I was terrified, and they let me watch it way too early in life, and it definitely messed me up. Overall, my inspirations for this story go all just pretty much everywhere, from authors from Ray Bradbury, John Gardner, Seamus Heaney to, oh man, all sorts of different films and horror films. But overall, I was really inspired to tell a story about a monster that has to deal with an aspect of containment.
We talked a lot early on about H.P. Lovecraft and a couple others. I'm so awful with names, but and certainly we're all familiar with Lovecraft, and that's been an influence on kind of the overall concept of the monster and the machinations that we're playing with.
Yeah, the concept of, well, I can't give too much away talking about the monster, but the idea that the monster is omnipotent enough to not be concerned with the trivial existence of human beings is kind of an idea we're exploring with the podcast.
Yeah, that always makes me think of what we keep bringing up is the analogy that I brought up to you guys about the ants. Do we talk about that at all? Or have we?
Not in behind the scenes stuff. No, I don't even brought up like our direct influences and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite thing about this. I read a comic strip at one point, and it was just trying to give perspective on like Lovecraftian monsters, and it's just this like Cthulhu type being that gets up, and it's just imagine being that person. You wake up and you look outside your door, and there's like some ants, and they have a sign with your name on it. And then at some point, like they start to ask you to do things for them, like kill those other ants over there. And you're just like, sure, it doesn't matter to me. It's like smush. And so we've just developed this analogy of that in terms of kind of how we operate with the monster. But getting back to the influences, yeah, it's always Lovecraft number one for me. And then I have to say Stephen King a lot as well. Just the nature of how we're writing, again, like with the suburbs and the supernatural and all that stuff, you can't really rule that out of the equation. I've read just a ridiculous amount of Stephen King, and so that really comes into play. But there's a lot of other things too, just like Jules Verne, Ernest Hemingway type things that go through my mind as I'm writing, and yeah, there's a lot.
And for me, another thing that kind of influenced a lot of the narrative in this and kind of how we're setting up the universe within the plot was video games, creepy video games that I grew up playing and still play, from Resident Evil to Silent Hill to Doom even. Just pretty much anything horror related has played a little bit of an influence in this story and in terms of kind of what we're trying to achieve with it.
Awesome. We have a second question from Colin, and this one's specifically for you, Owen. It says, in reports, is the Zach and Sarah mention a Benfield's 5 reference? Benfield's 5 reference. I can talk today.
I like Ben Folds. I like Ben Folds 5. I think I was just trying to pull some names out of people I know and or have been in contact with, and let's say subconsciously yes, sure. I didn't do it on purpose, but I like that it happened.
I don't even know their reference.
The song Zach and Sarah.
Okay.
That's it.
Hey, Dave's here.
Hey, Dave.
Excellent.
Howdy, Dave.
You're just drinking some coffee,
Yep.
Dave. Love it.
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of exposed here. I guess I should put pants on, huh?
No, we can't see your legs. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we can't see that far
Yeah,
down.
so this is audio only?
Please, just so that we keep good quality.
Oh, God, because I'm just awful looking. I can't do this. Here you go. All right, so now it's audio only. Good. Okay, so the internet guy just left, and apparently now my 12-year-old pipes are now, or 8-year-old pipes are now modern pipes. So I'll be seeing increased upload speeds and download speeds.
Wonderful. Thanks for being with us, Dave. We're like in the episode already, just to catch you up, but
Okay.
appreciate you being here.
All right, guys. The next question isn't really a question, more so a comment, but maybe you guys can elaborate a little bit further on it for me. It says, so you kill a lot of young females. Please stop. Listeners are asking us to kill others like Pete or Marjorie or the Lich, which I think he's already dead. But hey, we kill who the story wants us to kill, right?
Yep.
Hey, I haven't killed anybody.
That's true. But you do.
Dave's
You
Dave's
do.
music isn't innocent in all this.
That's right. I just make it sound worse or happy.
Oh, that would be a lot worse, actually,
Oh, God.
if you played happy music behind the death.
Anyone else have to elaborate on that?
You guys don't have anything to say about that?
Well, I'm thinking, I wrote the Aubrey character. I didn't go into it wanting to make her life just this miserable experience and to kill her off. Though pretty early on, we knew that she would die in this situation. What I was trying to do while writing that character was try to make her for a bully, as relatable as possible, to kind of show where she came from, the way she was raised, the trauma that she'd been through, and how that was affecting how she treated other people. In terms of that specific level of violence, I never specifically thought that was like the direct, like specifically. I was just spread a lot of the terror and misery around, but she just seemed to get a lot of it at that time within the plot. And that actually, I can't give away, but that actually echoes to what later happens in season 2. It's a setup to other things. So it wasn't just intentional that all that violence and these horrible things happened to Aubrey specifically. It was specific to her, but it wasn't just to make an example out of a sad story. It was also to further develop the plot and echo to something more powerful that's coming down the pipeline in terms of the story.
Yeah, of course, we had Amy, too, show up later, met an untimely end. Although by the end of the season, we killed off the middle-aged Star Trek fan dudes, too. So, it's not like we're exempting our types from getting killed off as well.
I was going to say, I got to kill like the middle-aged white guy, the father figure, so I haven't killed any young girls yet.
Yet,
Yeah.
the optimum word. In
I
that
did
sentence?
kill Aubrey's father, too. So that whole family just had a really hard time of it. And Aubrey's mother was also dead when the story started. So not a lot of love for that household. But we do plan to spread the misery around more evenly in the next few seasons.
So our next question
Yeah,
comes
careful
from...
what you wish for,
Oh.
whoever sent that in.
Yeah.
Right. Next question comes from David V. I like the Pete story, but I'd like him to get eaten. People like that drive me nuts. Aubrey is still the most well-developed death. So I've been wondering, how much of that story was not seeing her from another perspective, but perhaps Patrick was exercising some demons in his own way? Bullying really affects people over a long time, and while they're over it, sometimes they aren't. I think he's trying to ask you if you were bullied, Patrick.
And I was. That's an easy question to answer. And I guess all writing is therapeutic to a point. So it was therapeutic to write, not the viciousness that was based on my own experiences, but also the other perspective was therapeutic for me to write, because this particular bully who Aubrey was based on, I did hear about her life, years later from a friend or something, and who she was and how she grew up. And it all kind of made more sense to me why she was so angry and mean in the few settings I met her in at school and stuff growing up. So I just wanted to explore that perspective. And it wasn't in terms of like vengeful, like I was bullied, now I'll make them pay in fiction narrative. Like it wasn't like that at all. It was purely curiosity, like purely where can the narrative take me where I can try to understand why people become bullies and how bullying is derived from people.
Can I throw in a comment?
Yeah, you can comment as much as you'd like.
One of the things that I've learned in the last couple of years is something that surprised me, I think, about the nature of art. And we always talk about the therapy, for example, of the creative person who's trying to get something out. And in many respects, we talk about the audience who, achieve some kind of an aesthetic pleasure, maybe even they get a little bit more. But I think one of the things that has surprised me so much is when very, very, very bad things happen. I think one of the things that I've noticed was how much art prepared me for dealing with things almost as a simulation. So the more that I was able to, the more art that deals with personal death or things like that, the more I realized as I was going through some stuff and dealing with pretty serious issues, that art wasn't there as a diversion, that art all along had been some kind of maybe a kind of a virtual experience or some kind of a simulation. When you start to experience it more and more, you get to think about it more and more. And I think that that's definitely something that happens. And, talking about, the bullying instance like that, the more that people are able to go through things like that, I think that it probably serves as a kind of a preparation for things like that. This is something I've observed over the last couple of years that I didn't expect to ever think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think about that a lot with storytelling and things in general. Like it teaches people a lot about just emotions and the human experience and things like that. That's definitely something that we get, right? And you even think back to like children's fairy tales and stuff and how often they were trying to teach like moral lessons and things like that. Exactly. Yeah, good observation.
So there seemed to be some confusion about the non-linear nature of season 1. A couple listeners thought that the boy in the car and the dad in episode 4 were actually Eddie and the dad. Can anyone elaborate on that for me a little bit?
Part of the blame is that we don't name everybody. In fact, Ellie didn't have a name in the first episode. You were just sister. It was written on the page. That was kind of
it's because you guys thought I was going to do terrible.
No, it's not. We thought Eddie was going to be the primary sibling. That's what happened when we first got there.
I don't know what our excuse is with the father. We never gave him a name. We gave the grandfather Simon. He got a name.
Yeah, we never planned on naming that dad. I don't think that was ever part of it.
We didn't even get close to a name. We just were like, we should just leave him unnamed. Just leave him no name. Like very like mystical. But in terms of non-linear stuff,
back and forth in time, not super helpful to people.
Yeah. In terms of linear stuff, it was kind of. I feel like we were just coming up with story ideas so rapidly that we kind of worked backwards to forwards at times. We were throwing dates and times and like events at Bob, and Bob was trying to make it more continuous. That's a word.
That's a good word.
And it just didn't happen. The first season, we loved the idea of the narrative falling completely linearly in line, but it just didn't happen because we had flashbacks. We're working around a forest where time and space is all messed up. So it makes sense that the plot would reflect the setting and it wouldn't be like just a perfect compact little story. That's not what's happening in Hidden Oaks.
The other thing that I think that specific story was why it was tricky and why it could have been a little confusing is we were still wet behind the ears in terms of what we're doing with this show at that point. And in our heads, we see that story, and whether Patrick's the one that wrote it or whether we're the ones that are editing it, I think we're all sitting there thinking, we know this is the 50s. We just picture them in this 1950s car, 1950s diner, back in the past, whatever. But we didn't quite have the nuance down of like injecting the verbal cues of this is the past. And I think that made that story in particular a little confusing. Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah,
Yes and no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
we think, we felt like there was enough there, but it wasn't quite enough. And we just we also hadn't jumped back an entire generation plus at that point. So it was jarring. And yeah, we would set that up better if we were doing it now.
Yeah, when I wrote that, I tried to drop clues to the setting with like how old timey it was.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't want to do a direct, like it's the 1950s and every breakfast is coffee, donuts and cigarettes. Like that's not what we were thinking. And that's not what I was thinking. I was writing it. If it was confusing, I apologize, but it's just kind of one of those things we're learning as we're going.
I think for the most part, people got it, and on their second listens was even more clear. But anyway,
yeah,
and that's been kind of our consolation is, this is really great the second time around when you kind of know what you're listening for.
Well, apology accepted, Patrick. Thank you for putting that into words. So the next question we have is from Rob. I found the gas station guy to be the most relatable. I closed a gas station through high school and saw all kinds of crazy shit. I can really relate to him as an observer. Maybe not a question so much as a statement, but does anyone have anything for that?
I don't, I guess I created that person, but it's just Patrick.
Yeah, it's super meta.
So
it's me.
I didn't know that. This is just coming out now. I just found that out.
Is that sarcasm?
I'm working on my sarcasm.
I can't. I don't know how much we're allowed to talk about what we did with the gas station or whatever, but I don't know. You guys stop me if it's too much. But as we kind of developed that, just the whole nature of the gas station sequence was just we got to mid-season, and this specifically rides off of the linear question that we just had. Like we used it to rein some things in, and I don't know. I guess there were some pieces of Patrick's real life history that I remember talking to him about when I first interviewed him on my other show. And I just thought, you know what? This really fits for this role. Like I'm just going to turn him into one of the characters for the show. And that's what happened. And yeah, he just doesn't really care about all this weird stuff going on around him. But he watches it all. And I feel like any night shift person in the service industry can completely just get that, just the weird shit that goes on at night. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything to say about it as that character, Patrick?
Yeah, I appreciated it when I read that story for the first time. I was like, it's me, yay! It was just very meta. It was just like I'm writing Hidden Oaks. I'm writing it with you guys. We're creating this giant story. Like I'm in the story as myself, writing a story that I wrote in real life, because he's writing a story in the gas station called the Greenland Diaries, which is a book series that I write and release. So it was even more meta. Like it was like this circle of meta. And I always think about the term meta when from Community. At one point, Abed is saying something and it pisses Jeff off, and Jeff says, "God damn it, Abed, why do you have to take everything and just shove it up its own ass?" And that's how I think of with meta to a point, but not really. But it was just flattering. I just really liked it. I did have one complaint from a listener who was like, "Why didn't you voice yourself in that story?" And I was like, I didn't even think to. I just kind of went with the flow or whatever.
It wasn't one of the voiced stories. Is
right.
That's true.
An answer to that question. Probably at some point you will end up voicing Patrick.
No, I think I'm a better Patrick than Patrick is.
Oh, okay.
See,
I can see
that's just going to cause this whole cycle of madness over here. Like, am I not a good enough Patrick to be Patrick in the podcast that I'm writing? But yeah, it was just flattering. It was nice.
The host isn't paying attention.
That's not true. I'm totally paying attention. I'm
She's
just trying to
giving us good editing options. We need to get a good long.
Well, this next question is like bringing me back to like a personal experience. So I wanted to make sure I was in the nostalgic moment. Melanie asked, is notch corn good? Are there any specific gas station cheeses that are superior to others? She says she'll probably end up trying it at some point, but any feedback would be helpful. And for example, for the love of God, don't try it.
I've never had it.
I've sure sounds like the kind of thing I would have tried, but no, I haven't either.
I think there's two.
Well, I can give you the origin story of the nacho corn. When I worked at a movie theater, the same one that I got locked out of at the first story, when my friend and I went to go watch The Phantom Menace, and I got locked out. I eventually got a job there a couple of years later, or 3 years later. And nacho corn was basically, you didn't get a lot of free stuff working there. You got free popcorn, you got free nacho cheese, but not free nacho chips, which was fucking what the fuck. But you also got free soda. And, I was like in high school working there. So when we'd have like a 15-minute lunch break or whatever, you could eat popcorn or you could buy something from the vending machine or just buy something. But I would just someone told me to take the popcorn and put nacho cheese on it, then eat it with a fork, which was even funnier because the movie theater didn't have anything that you served forks with. So they had no forks. So you would get the popcorn, you'd put the nacho cheese on top of it, and you get like a little cup. And then you'd scoop the stuff out and then just eat it out of a small cup with your mouth, which was fine at the time. I wouldn't do it now. But when I was like a 17-year-old kid, I was just like, oh, this is delicious. One time I did fill up a big like bag of it and bring it home with me. And then I poured it onto a plate to eat at home. And I remember pouring it out and my dad looking at it and he was like, you can't eat that. That's horrifying.
Oh, God.
And I remember looking at it, and there's like pools of oil and the cheese, and it was not a good combination, but it worked for me while I was working at the movie theater.
Oh God, this sounds terrible. I don't know why. This is hilarious to me.
You're dying right now.
I'm dying. Once you got to the eating it with the little cup.
Just imagine one of those little Dixie cups like in a bathroom. Yeah.
What? Oh my God. Robin, you've tried this too. You're the only other person crazy enough.
I did, but I, figured eventually everyone was going to, and I didn't want to be the last one to do it. So I'm sorry. Patrick, I'm with you. I don't think it was terrible. I stopped at a Casey's and got the nacho cheese from Casey's. So shout out to Casey's for that. Maybe they'll sponsor us next episode or something. But I also did buy blue corn chips. So I didn't go cup style. I didn't realize that was a part of it. I went out and bought the chips. And so mine was more notch corn chips.
Yours was like nachos with popcorn on it.
It was fantastic.
No, that's still a good combination. It's just a lot. It's just a lot of grease and flavor, and I wouldn't recommend it like if you're conscious towards like your health or your life or anything. But I'm
not
if
saying
you're gonna
eat it all the time.
Try it. Like you got to eat it with a cup, not a fork. That's the kind of tradition. Because they're like these little dinky courtesy cups. Because people would ask for water at the movie theater, and of course, you didn't want to just give them anything. You wanted to like sell them a giant bottle of water. But if they really needed water, you give them a courtesy cup. So you could give them a courtesy cup, and that's what I would use as a utensil. Because, like I said, there were no forks there or anything. There was nothing like that.
Why didn't you bring one from home?
Well, I didn't think like that. I mean, come on, I'm eating nacho corn. Like, I'm not that. I don't plan out stuff like that well. When I brought it home, though, my dad was so horrified by it. He was like, you can't eat that.
You're the real monster here.
Yeah. No, I am. I mean, that's going to be obvious once we get a few more seasons in.
I think we should just ask the listeners to give it a try and then send in pictures so we can see like some fancy notch corn. Like who's taking that sour cream and onion topping and putting it on there too.
Right.
Just to, like,
The driver's license makes a great utensil for Taco Bell as well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Cut to class action suit against us of how many people having heart attacks.
Right.
I'm not saying indulge all the time, but
In 2020, did you listen to this podcast Hidden Oaks and try their not screwing?
Oh, we're one of those late night attorney ads. It's like it
picture of the
causes-
woman
it
crying in the
causes
corner.
esophageal cancer and various other, like
I lost my tongue.
I went blind.
Can I ask how you're talking if you've lost your tongue, sir?
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, can I put in an editing note, by the way? Something that I want cut out? Can I do that?
If
right
you're
now?
asking for it, you can't get it. You know that.
You know what I say about asking to have things cut out, but go ahead.
Send
Yeah.
an email about it later.
When I apologized for people being confused, like,
No.
I don't fucking apologize. Like, figure it
Yeah.
out. Fuck it. Like, I take it back.
I mean, you
Like-
could just say that. We can just leave.
It was the 1950s. There was a diner and an old-ass car and a really straight-laced dad with thick-rimmed glasses and short hair, and where he was wearing a tie. Like,
There are still
you know?
people that wear ties. I know a man works in an ER.
Is
Wears
it
a tie.
Me?
No.
Oh, well, there's other people too. Okay, anyway.
You wear ties in the ER?
No.
Okay.
What was I going to say? I thought you were taking back your you've apologized twice now.
oh, Christ.
Yeah, because there was that you apologized about Aubrey or something before
You did,
that.
actually.
Well, that one, I mean, I feel bad about, I guess. The apology about the being confusing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a Minnesotan. Just like drown me in like self-loathing.
Robert, you just have to
Anyways.
talk more old-timey and nasally. Like, get the radio feel. Then they would understand.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Give it a try.
I know I was just going to do it, but I don't have anything to say.
We can come up with something. It's you.
Make an advertisement for nacho corn.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Which would be like, it'd be laced
Yeah.
with like nicotine and
The tears
what
of
else
your
would be
enemies.
laced with back then? It has such a cocktail of addictive ingredients.
Are you having a hard time breathing? Does your heart hurt? Your doctor recommends nacho corn. Go on down to your local gas station or movie theater and eat it with a fork today. Something like that.
That's exactly.
Not a fork, a cup.
Patrick and the real Patrick that works at Sun X Gas and Go, he eats it with a fork. The real
He's
Patrick.
not the real Patrick. Like, I'm the real
Doesn't make him
Patrick.
real.
Yeah. This is like
Seems pretty real
this
to
is the
me.
ultimate.
I don't know which one to shoot.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, this is getting kind of actually confusing.
You're confused about yourself, Patrick?
You know which one
I'm
you
okay.
are, right? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Like, we can talk about that if you need to.
Yeah, I have a professional that helps me with these things.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Next question is, we're going to talk a little bit about everyone's writing processes. We're going to go right around the horn for Cameron and Melanie. Patrick, do you want to get us started with what's your writing process?
oh, God. Let's see. Well, first I think of an idea, and then I mull over that idea, and then I write it down, and then I write a story about what I've written down, and then I am done. It's I've really been writing seriously for like 8 years now, so I do just kind of just do it now. There are times when I lose my confidence or I can't quite wrap my head around it, but I have enough faith in editing and revision. I've done so much of that now that I know if I am completely missing the mark, that we'll find it in edits, or like if people that help me with my writing, beta readers, whatever you want to call it, that they'll iron out what I'm doing wrong, kind of, or at least let me know about it. But my writing process is, I just write whenever I can. I write at work, I write at night, I write in the morning, I write when my kids aren't driving me crazy. I just try to write as much as possible, and it's just been the best way for me to communicate, my emotions, my thoughts, my feelings, all that kind of stuff. So it's really just a passion. I know it doesn't really illuminate my process at all. It just, sounds like kind of a cop-out, like, oh, I just like doing it. Overall, it really is that simple for me, I guess.
Owen, do you want to go next for us?
Sure. We kind of talked about our processes in the behind the scenes way at the beginning of the season when Bob and I hadn't written all that much, but we probably got more to say now. Since we're writing so many different stories and so many different points of view, you kind of get a do-over every time. It's you kind of get to invent the wheel as many times as you want, which is a good match for me. I'm a notorious reinventor of wheels. So there are the stories that I'll have a real clear picture of. Okay, I want this structure in my head. I want to adhere to some kind of parameters I want to follow. This one is first person. I want to express everything through only thoughts that they would have, nothing external, stuff like that. And then there's also the ideas that I procrastinate. They've asked me to write a dialogue between these and these characters to tell this side of a story, and I have no idea what I'm doing, so I procrastinate for 2 weeks and then just kind of dump out whatever I panically think of in the moment, throw that away, and it'll give me an idea that becomes the real one that I do next. It's been really haphazard. It's sort of lack of process, but I've gotten a little bit more linear than I started out. When I started out, I would have partial outlines, and I'd go back and I'd rewrite sections, and I'd throw away the first half and recombobulate something. I do less of that now, but I still do some of that. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for what does my process look like. It looks messy. It looks like the babbling I've just been doing.
Dave, do you want to give us an insight for your writing?
Music or
music,
prose,
yes.
or
all of it.
Here's a dirty little secret. Once upon a time, I decided that if I studied how to develop a musical idea, I would become a better writer, because when I was a kid, I wanted to be Ernest Hemingway. And I always loved the idea, or Edgar Allan Poe, I loved the idea of being able to close yourself off, that romantic idea of being up from, 9:30 at night until 2:30 in the morning, But for me, it ended up, at least to talk about the way that writing music happens, it's kind of the inspiration, if it's not an assignment, the inspiration typically comes, and by assignment, I mean a job, it'll usually come with kind of a sense, like almost like a flash, where you get this whole feeling of like this sense of completion. Like, I know what this is going to feel like, and I don't exactly know, but I know what it's going to feel like. And you have a sense of how to start it off. And so then for me, the process of writing music is just simply work. I like to write in the morning. I'll usually like to write, especially if I'm developing something, if it's a big piece, then I like to write until I get to a point where, again, this was a Hemingway idea. I get to a point where I know what's going to happen next, and then I stop right before I get there, so I have something to come back to. I don't empty the glass. And so I basically, as silly as it sounds, I put down a note. If I like it, I keep it, and then I add another one. It really is very much like that. Writing music, though, for the work that I've done with these guys, whether it was Hidden Oaks or whether it was other things that we've done, is really kind of a really cool combination of extreme planning and total chance. And the idea that, we all kind of get to collaborate, even if, to allow other people to come up with, kind of uses of things that I do. It really is kind of almost like, Jackson Pollocky. It really is. So that's a different kind of writing process. And so it really is kind of chance, and is this neat? And I'm looking for little nifty sounds as opposed to developing a whole idea. And then if I do write a little prose. For me, short stories or fiction is somehow a few years back, all of a sudden it became like I get an idea, but then it's like sitting down and doing dictation. It's like I'm watching what's going on, which is a strange thing because I used to think words, especially since I did a lot of academic writing. And all of a sudden, it's not so much thinking words. It's taking dictation. And then Patrick, I think, mentioned what a cool idea or how fun it is to edit. I absolutely love editing. So that gets to be a big part of it too. But I'm not as disciplined with writing prose as I am writing music.
Robert, do you want to chime in on yours?
Yeah. First of all, I really like that idea that you mentioned, Dave, about not emptying the glass, like leaving something for yourself to come back to. That's a really good thing. I'm going to hang on to that.
Yeah, that's a Hemingway idea, and I can't emphasize that enough, man. If you write up to that last measure and you don't know what's going to happen next, good luck.
Yeah, right.
You got nothing to think about. You left yourself with a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's
it's
true.
been incredibly helpful for me, and that works really well for prose or any kind of prose, fiction or non.
Definitely. My process, it used to be even more kind of abstract. I think I would spend a long time thinking about a story, and I think I even mentioned in one of the other behind the scenes things, I would just kind of pace around and I just have to imagine it in my head like it's a scene. Like there's a lot of visualization. I go through it very linearly, like starting from the beginning of it where, you know, and then just what happens next to get to the point where things need to go. That has changed a little bit. Like I've started outlining more now. I actually have like a little writer's notebook that Robin gave me. And
Is it moleskin? Is it moleskin?
No, it's like one of those little it's got the wax covered paper so you can write outdoors in the rain and stuff like that. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I've seen them at places like REI and stuff before. They're cool. But anyway, I use that a lot. And then I also Owen has seen it because we've worked on a couple stories together where when I get to that point, again, I'm still always doing the visualization thing at first, but once I'm outlining, I'm outlining the steps that I need to take, just like basically almost paragraph by paragraph, like what happens each point along the way. And then I just have that in front of me while I write, and it becomes a story. That's pretty much it. But yeah, I don't do any of the like abstract jumping around. I can't write the ending and then come back and get myself there. That just, it doesn't work for my brain. So, and I have to see it first. If I can't see it, I can't write it. So, the end.
Great job, gentlemen. The next question we have is for Owen specifically again. How was it adjusting to editing audio after you're so used to doing video?
I actually use the same software, Blender, which I don't recommend anybody use for editing either video or audio. It's not meant to be that tool for that job, but it's what I know and it's what I like. It's preposterously powerful and does both things well. It's just hostile to its users. The data sizes are much smaller. The the fidgety frame accurate cuts and stuff are much easier. Yeah, in some ways it's just a lot simpler, but it's also, audio was to me the hardest part of video editing. The visual stuff is kind of instinct at this point, and like Patrick was saying about writing, I just can kind of do it at this point. But getting the sound right, making sure all the tracks are cleaned and there isn't noise and all this stuff, and the background and the added Foley and all that. So getting all that right is the tricky part. Fortunately, I got Dave here to get great music from and sound effects too. He's been super helpful over the years for that kind of stuff. And I still lean on him for those things during Hidden Oaks and doing audio only.
Well, that was one of the cool things about working with Owen is kind of figuring out each other's, what we do. And Owen has really got an incredibly good musical sense. So as opposed to like writing a really specific cue, which is what you would typically have to do, here it is, 1:14, right on the button. I can leave some leeway because I know Owen is going to find some dramatic element that I didn't even know was there. He's just got a really good musical sense. So that I think allows more collaboration. I mean, I think, art by committee, when it's done great, is great. And it's always been great with these guys because there's just so much creativity and flexibility, to allow, like I said, I have no problem giving Owen, something and letting him find the thing for it.
That's great. And I reciprocate that entirely. I'm happiest when Dave sends me too much and I don't even have time to listen to it all, because I know that I'll be mining it for years and finding, oh geez, this is the perfect little sting for this moment. And this is we've really developed a a pretty broad surface area of how we share the soundscapes of things over the years. It's been really great. I also wanted to, while I'm babbling about audio, in season 1, I think it was kind of early on. I don't remember which episode it was, but it was really the first time we were crossing paths back with the nerds playing with their lightsabers in the streets. We had the guy in the ambulance, and they had this slam on the brakes and screech, and I had this. I'd found this really good Foley for the sirens blaring and the tires screeching, and then it occurred to me, if somebody is listening to this in a car, they're going to be really angry at best and in mortal danger at worst. So we kind of had to, we had our little internal a little internal debate, and no, we can't leave that in the episode. It sounds great, but no, we can't use that. And it's only crept up another time or two, something like that, where it sure would be neat to have this kind of sound in there, but it's going to be a bad combination to somebody listening somewhere. We've left it out. I've also heard from people who listen to podcasts at double or quadruple speed, which is great for absorbing a whole lot of information quickly. But it just what a punch to the gut that was. All of Dave's music just sped up and crunched down like that. Oh no!
Can we use it? I like the fact that there hasn't been a whole lot of Mickey Mousing going on. The more abstract of it, I think it kind of, in a way, when I listen to it, because I listened to it, remember I did the big binge listen, and I liked the fact that there was that kind of thematic continuity and keeping it more or less abstract, as opposed to having lots and lots and lots of authentic Foley, which would almost, it would have been a tough thing keeping the audio environment the same, perhaps. But I liked that it was very abstract from beginning, kind of a little more abstract. And I think that's a strength, or at least my personal taste. I love it.
Yeah, and part of it is just even the stories that they are, eavesdropping on two people having a conversation, and so there's Foley in there. We do have a few of those, but yeah, it would just be exhausting to try and get every little detail. A lot of the lovely abstraction is just my own laziness.
And that's what the too much music is on my part. What I send you, it's too much laziness. Now, sometimes it's important. What is more important? Is it what they're saying or the fact that that they're walking? There's this really great little story that Mark Hamill told about being on the set of Star Wars and doing the scene in the trash compactor and then going to do the next scene. And he stops and he says, wait a minute, shouldn't my hair be all messy and wet and everything because I just got out of the trash compactor? And Harrison Ford looks over at him and he says, yeah, I don't think it's that kind of movie, kid. And he's like, right, sometimes it's not important to have some of that stuff. Sometimes it's better to just forget about it. People know already, sort of, I think, maybe.
All right, you guys. So the next question is for me. I wasn't ready for this. It says your performance were fantastic. Thanks, guys. That's really nice. Have you done any voice acting or any other acting before? I was, ready for this, wife number 3 in a series of Little Abner back in high school. You guys, there was like
fantastic.
3 different clothing changes.
This exact way when I heard your initial recording of the sister.
The sister.
Your performances have been amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the only other thing I've ever done, acting wise.
That's the only thing?
Wait, is there more? I act all the time when
I
I'm
don't know.
talking to people and being nice.
I'm even surprised. I thought there was more.
No, I was wife number 3. Had a little song I sang.
Go ahead and sing it.
No, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. There was 2 clothing changes, like it's not a big deal.
My goodness.
Our next question is for Dave. How would you describe the metallic chime sound used for the forest? What was your inspiration for it?
How would I? Well, it could be described as a metallic chime sound. That's a pretty good description of it. One of the things I was like looking for when Owen and I and when we talk about these cues, I like a little less description. Like, this is the forest, it's a monster or something. I don't remember, but so what I was trying, especially as we were trying to do something. Or as we were trying to develop it, again, it was just to kind of restate what I said. My thinking was, can I make this kind of an elaboration of something that sounds like it might have been a perverted version of something organic? And so with that sound, I think the thing that hit me with the forest sound was the kind of echoey quality of it. That was something that might have reminded me of wind in Wisconsin, or even a bamboo forest in California or Hawaii, where there was something kind of metallic-y, which I think that metallic-y is almost, I don't know, I think that might have just been a taste, but it seems a little more evil because it is coarser than something like if I had used sampled bamboo, which I do have also. So I was kind of going for kind of, here's the actual sound. Can I Picasso it and take something that reminds us enough of it that it reinforces the words without just being like Mickey Mouse in it, so that you're just basically seeing exactly what he just said when he read it, So I did. I look for something abstract, something that really makes it seem like it's an abstraction from the real sound.
That's great. It's fun to hear you talk about that. I've asked you for so many sounds over so many years for so many projects, and never bothered to ask you things like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I really like, I really think that when you, I don't know, this is a big art conversation. It's not appropriate to get into, but I really like it when you can like make things deeper than they are, instead of spoon feeding, that whole iceberg principle, that where, somebody contributes to the feeling and you just nudge them in the right direction. I really like that. I like that in movies. I like that in paintings. But one of the things though, is that it's inevitable because, believe it or not, and I'll never forget this, like I was probably 15 years old, early 80s, and some meatheads are being, metal band is being interviewed on MTV, and they're like, yeah, record everything, man. That's what we say, record it. Of course, these idiots, whatever. But honestly, like the thing that I've loved the most are all the gifts that I've given myself that I didn't know I was giving myself until years later. Like I used to sit down and just crank out lots and lots of different sounds for no particular reason than I thought they were cool. So now I've got this huge palette of instruments, kind of, so to speak, to choose from. And it's been just kind of a perfect opportunity to do that. So now instead of worrying about the creation, I get to worry about how can I focus on how it is that abstraction like we were just talking about. Because I'm not sure I could have written it quite the way I heard it, if that makes sense. I just don't know that I was that good. I'm going to make something that's a metallic sounding abstraction of woods. No. I kind of got lucky. So that's why I say I gave myself a lot of gifts by just creating really cool sounds and then turning the raw materials into something that we can use.
That's great. During the behind the scenes, I talked a little bit about you and I having our jokes that are not jokes about making careers out of recycling, keeping stuff around and repurposing and finding new uses. And our latest little inter-season story was The Smell, a novelization, for lack of a better word, that recycling has its benefits. Keeping stuff around and letting it find its purpose as it's needed. That's great.
Well, there was one story. I mean, it goes back to the very first movie that we did when it was the theater. And one of the first things that you did, because I just kind of sent you music because I had no clue what to expect. But the first edit that you did included that piece that I wrote for clarinet, marimba, and tape that was electronically realized. Yeah. And when you put a classical piece or what I thought was a concert piece and made it part of a movie, all of a sudden I realized, okay, I know exactly the kind of people I'm working with. There are no rules. And so that was really cool, because then I didn't have to sit down and write a traditional cue. You know, here it goes, dun, 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 you know, that kind of nonsense, you know, or anything. We could do something completely original, and then that's been really, really fun.
Well, I'm really glad you feel that way, and that's the direction the I know what kind of people I'm working with now sentence took.
Yeah. Because now what's really going to suck is when I run out of samples, then I'm going to have to start writing. You know, that's really going to be terrifying.
I think you guys both do a really, really great job when it comes to all of that. Let's talk a little bit about how much world building has the team mapped out for Hidden Oaks in order to keep track of everything that's going on in the story.
Patrick, do you want to lead that one off?
We've done quite a bit of world building, but we've also kind of left things open for like the organic interaction in our writing process. So if we have some plot devices or elements of plot that kind of like we have some of them planned out that we know that are going to happen in the season within the arcs of certain stories. But we also like to leave an element of surprise for us as writers to kind of explore things a little bit. So I've written a bunch of stuff about the lore and whatnot, and it's sorry, my kids are like having a fight outside my window.
I hear that.
It sounds like they're moving further down the block away from us. It's good. Anyways.
Start sampling that for season 2.
Right toward Hidden Oaks Park.
Yeah. That made me lose my train of thought. Oh yeah. So the mapping of the universe. Yeah. I write some of the lore stuff, the stuff that really, describes the monster, what the monster can do, what its rules are for existing in our reality. And sometimes we'll go over it in our meetings and stuff and throw it on our giant wiki, which is like this big spider web. But also, sometimes I won't tell them anything and I'll just throw an element in and they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I kind of just go with the flow a little bit, or if I notice like there's a lore element that can go into the story that'll positively affect the universe, I add it. And if it's something that I don't know if it'll work, I usually talk to them about it. But I do kind of like to surprise Bob and Owen as we're writing this with elements of the story.
That's true. And I think we all do that a little bit, but you definitely do it the most. The other thing that kind of comes to mind as we think about this brings me back to kind of what we were talking about with the 1950s flashback. Like, I think we're still, at least I can speak for myself, like I'm definitely still gaining my footing on remembering how much we talk about and develop the world that doesn't actually end up coming into the stories. But then also when we write the stories, we have to remember that the audience doesn't know all the stuff about the world that we know. And then we have to describe it. It's like easy to leave out because we're just like, we know a lot more about it than they do. And so for me, that's always kind of a tightrope walk, like making sure that I put the stuff in there instead of just assuming that it's obvious.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
Only because you asked so
And I'm
nicely.
Dave, first time caller, long time listener.
Hi, Dave.
First of all, the voice acting that you guys all did is just incredibly, incredibly good. I'm just
Thanks,
blown away by it. I mean, it's just so good. But the writing also is incredible. But the question I've got about your writing is, like, when I watch The Twilight Zone, I know the guys that are writing these episodes, but you guys have managed to create something incredibly seamless stylistically. And unless I knew who was writing the story, and I hope that doesn't come down as an insult at all, because to me it seems like an incredibly planned thing that you guys were absolutely able to either mimic each other or come up with a style, or it just happened because you've been friends for such a long time. But that was one of the things that just kind of blew me away.
Wow, thanks, Dave. I think
Thank you.
I think part of that comes from our constant meetings that we have, and we develop the story together, but then also we all edit in kind of a round table fashion, so there's a little bit of the voice that comes through. Late season we wrote several of those stories together, but I guess that almost it doesn't have to work that way. I don't know exactly what it is because there's a few stories that we wrote where, Patrick started out the first like page of the story and then he passed it off to Owen who wrote a page and then Owen passed it off to me and I wrote a page and it doesn't seem like these stark contrasting narrative changes. Well, I don't know why.
It doesn't seem like there's, this is the same structure as this, or this is the same dialogue, or this is the same vocabulary. It just seems really seamless. And I just was amazed because again, I binge listened and it just felt like one author throughout the entire thing. And that was really impressive.
I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on why that is?
I think one thing is that we all, Owen, Bob, and myself, we all have a similar taste in narrative, if that makes sense. We all kind of have what we're looking for. We all kind of share what we're looking for and how the story is told, what details are shared, how we develop our characters. That was pretty universal between all three of us, even before we started the project and just having little brainstorming sessions about what we wanted to do. We all kind of had similar motivations, and I think that really helped with the actual composition of the story is that we could all focus in on specific details and elements a lot easier.
For sure, and the fact that you kind of got us in on the ground floor of creating this universe with you, I think it was within the first 10 minutes of the three of us meeting for the first time that you're talking about this generational thing, and the father dies and one of us threw in, that should only happen when he's needed most. Yeah. That is actually kind of how that turned out. And after much development, very early on, we all kind of decided, let's get on the same page about the story we're telling. And we've just got going. And every once in a while it gets complicated, but we've all cared enough that it's been important to us to, even though we switch voices a lot, we do different types of stories, to have some sort of unified front, and I'm really glad that's coming off.
Oh, I mean, it's again, to go back to the Twilight Zone, they all feel like Twilight Zone episodes, but Earl Hamner is always the guy that does the folksy thing, and the other guy, I can't remember, was it Kaufman? No, not Charles Kaufman. Anyway, there's another guy who always does this thing where kids go off into a different world to escape, and so you start to pick up these patterns with some of these writers, but with you guys, and that's a lot of writing. That's 30 stories, right, in the first season?
Yeah, it's glorious. I love it, but it is exhausting.
Cool. It's really, really cool. Yeah, that was again one of the things that the acting and the writing, first of all, stood out first, and then the acting, of course, just brought it out. I mean, it's really, really impressive that it does have such a unified voice. Really. I mean, I was impressed. I was like, hey, Owen writes?
I guess so.
It was just like, wow, all these guys are like, wow, man, they're like so locked in. It's impressive.
Sorry that my dog barked a bunch there.
Didn't even hear it.
Okay. He barked, and now he's just kind of sitting by the computer, lowly growling. But yeah, I do think that our meetings help with that. Like, we see each other twice a week, and we meet for sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes an hour. Like, we really go over everything with a fine-tooth comb for the most part. We still miss things. We're human beings. But overall, we really go through a lot of the details of what we're telling.
Well, this kind of downtime, as it were, parenthetically speaking, I think it's really cool because, again, I said it as kind of a joke, but this year I really got to find out how talented all of these guys were when they did like all these different abilities. Like, again, Owen had always been a great director and editor and everything, but again, to find out that he writes too. I mean, that was just an example, or that everybody's able to act. That's been really kind of cool. And to see this as kind of I don't know, it sounds kind of cheesy to say, but it's a kind of a really logical step, to do something really big and really challenging and really cohesive on the first go is pretty freaking impressive.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
And all the while, your music makes it sound as though we know what we're doing.
Truly.
My constant comment about everything I've produced in the last
That
5-6
works
years.
both ways.
Fortunately, I got Dave's score under it.
Say, Patrick, I'm going to call you out for the next question here because I think it most pertinent to you.
Okay.
Can we expect to see certain characters from the podcast come back in the future? I think specifically we're talking about Aubrey.
Yes and no. Man, that's such an asshole question, but it's the truth.
Insert
but-
ominous music here.
Yeah, I do think we will see Aubrey again, but it will be in ways that I will, may not be what you'd be accustomed to seeing. I think that for all our characters, some of them, we know when they're going to expire and when they don't, and some, we have a plan, but overall, gosh, yeah, it's difficult because I can't. That's like a huge spoiler question. That question is like an acidic, like the horrible chemicals being sprayed upon me to like bleed out spoilers. But I mean, no offense
To
whoever
whomever
asked the
asked
question.
It was like
But,
multiple people. So all
what's
of them.
that?
I said it was multiple people, so they can all go fuck themselves. That's what you're saying, right? I just want to summarize.
No, that would match my tone from earlier, where I was like, just figure it out. Without giving too much away, I think you can expect to see some of these characters again in some form or another. Maybe not. I know, maybe not a happy way, but in a way that would fit the story.
That's great. So how much has the real location influenced the tone and the setting of the podcast or story, was asked of us.
I've still never been there.
I use it a lot. Every single time I write, I have Google Maps open. I don't know about you guys.
I've looked at the layout, yeah, but I've still never been to the park.
I mean, and I've said this in other behind the scenes stuff, but I grew up right down the street from Hidden Oaks Park. In the first story, in episode 1, they talk about this place called Snaketooth Pass, and that was a forest that I played in when I was a kid, right behind Hidden Oaks, and a little island with the pit where the monster is being contained. Like that island exists. Like I used to play on it when I was a kid. The church nearby, the playground with the Crayola colors, the old playground that's been torn down because it was terrible and like partially condemned. Like all that stuff are for my memories of growing up just down the road from there. So memory for me plays a huge role in how I tell the story about it.
I'm working on some cues that we discussed for season 2, and location, Midwest, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the North Woods, all of that is incredibly important to me. It's incredibly important because when we were talking about it, I think we even had this conversation, knowing, time and place is a big difference between what instruments you might choose and what instruments might, take you someplace that is more obvious than not. For the best example is the Norwegian folk tune in Fargo, and only having it being played on on that fiddle like that. Not the, your typical, somebody might, if they had put it on a horn or a wind instrument, somebody might have confused it for Irish. So even something as simple as that really lends it. So these are answers rather than questions for me. I mean, the more limitations, the more freedom. I mean, we've got some really, even when we started talking about another project that included an Irish kind of, or a Celtic kind of.
Oh yeah.
I looked up and I found the Overtone series for this really, really old Celtic wind instrument that sounds really cool. That once we get to a point, I definitely am going to use it for something or another. But I think it's incredibly valuable to know where it's coming from. And for me, especially growing up in northern Wisconsin, the area, the history is all real similar.
Thank you. The next question we have is, why didn't you talk about the brother, sister, and father in the behind the scenes, or Walter or Marjorie for that matter?
We forgot. I don't know.
That is a terrible excuse.
I think, that is the reason. We forgot and we ran out of time, but I think maybe to elaborate on the question, do we take this opportunity to do that a little bit? Or is there anything there?
Yeah. Well, my answer for not elaborating on any of those characters was that Bob made it obscenely strong, old-fashioned, and I was barely conscious for most of the behind-the-scenes episode. No, we just ran out of time. Like we had so much content. I mean, like Dave so glowingly said earlier, we wrote 30 stories, which is a lot of content. That's equal to, we've done some calculations, but that's equal to about at least a 300-page book with normal spacing. So yeah, a lot of stuff to go over. It's not like we don't love the siblings or the story about Walter and Marjorie. It was just we ran out of time.
Yeah, when we first talked about the idea, I was like panicked because I'm thinking, oh my, hey, you want to do some music for a podcast? Sure. How about 10 episodes, something like akin to writing the score for Winds of War or something like that? I'm like, holy crap, man, there's no way this can happen, So when we all started talking and looking at themes and ideas and connecting sound qualities with other elements of the story, it kind of helped. but my point was, it's an enormous literary product. A lot of writing.
Yeah, a lot of writing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what should we say about the family, the containment family? It seems like, that's an awfully important ingredient in this. And, there was a question before, will we see certain characters again? Yeah, you'll see them again.
With the siblings, the reason we didn't talk, I'm backtracking with this whole thing. Go ahead, Bob. You think of something. Give me a second.
I'm the time filler for Patrick to think about stuff. Yeah, they have really come a long way. I think I was already kind of speaking to this earlier when we originally brought them in. Well, I should say at the very beginning, I think when they first were alluded to, it was the Walter and Marjorie story where they came up. You guys remember that?
That's right.
They just allude to this guy down the street, and we already had the father who was we knew he was getting sick and going away in an ambulance, and we would develop that later. The very first time we edited that story, it was two brothers, and Owen and I kind of suggested together, like, maybe it should be a brother and sister. Just where we've come from that point, yes, it's a long way. I would have to say that. For me, I don't know if it was always this way, because I think Owen and Robin had a very similar idea of like who the sister was. But for me, it was Robin's performance that really started to change my interpretation of who the sister character was. And in large part because of that, the roles switched, right? I guess we were first introduced to these characters in the dialogue sequence on the phone, and that was just this nebulous thing. Like, we knew we were going to bring them into the story, but didn't know where they were coming from. And I went right into the Eddie story after that. Like, they were written right back to back. I think Owen and I worked on them the same week. And the whole time I was like, well, Eddie's going to be the main guy from this family. We knew we were going to kill the dad off basically right away. So we're like, okay, Eddie's going to be it. And then I don't know just who Owen wrote and Robin.
I'm not sure where it came from, but I wanted the sibling dynamic during the phone call to be much less one-sided than we initially talked about. She's the younger one and stuff like that, but I think in some ways she's the more mature character, and
definitely
it got more and more interesting as we talked about the edits and revisions process. And by the time the two of you read it to perform it, there must have been something okay about the script I ended up with. I remember hearing that recording the first time and just being amazed. Like, did I write that? That's good. It truly was the performance that really sold Ellie as. And you're right. I remember you being surprised about the direction her performance took, but it was spot on to what I had hoped it would be. And honestly, it was much better than I ever expected or hoped it might have turned out.
Yeah, and like I said, like it was really that performance that changed. And I guess this is actually kind of an important thing to think about. It was that performance that changed who Ellie was in my mind in the story. Like it completely became a different character. And then I guess it's kind of important for me to think about the fact that the next couple of sibling stories I wrote from there. And so that was where this transition took place, where we really started to kind of infuse a lot more strength and stuff into the Ellie character to the point where we are now, which, I kind of won't say, but you'll see where they get left off at the end, or from where they get left off at the end of season 1, where we go. But
yeah, I think that initial planning for the family dynamics was pretty rudimentary for us at first. We really didn't know how it was going to work out. But I remember us having conversations about, we thought Eddie would be the guy that's like going to be, the stereotypical older brother who's like, I can handle all this responsibility. But we just didn't think that was realistic to the situation of the story. And it seemed like Ellie, who had more of a relationship with her father, who was kind of brave enough to face her own demons and implement them into her everyday life, it just seemed better to have her be the more competent sibling and the stronger character of the two of them. They really are characters who are based on the idea of, we have this traumatic father, this bad father who was an alcoholic and was cruel to his children and stuff like that, very distant, and he upholds this tradition to keep this monster contained, and he can't keep doing it anymore. His body's starting to break down, and he has to pass on these traditions. Well, he doesn't really have roads to get that information to his kids because he didn't really develop those relationships with them. And really, the children characters are learning about the situation as the audience is learning about it too, which was something that was really important to me, that the children were in as much bewilderment about what was happening as the audience would be.
You wanted to say anything about Marjorie and Walter? That was your thing.
A Rose for Walter. That story was a direct ripoff. It was a direct ripoff of a short story by William Faulkner, A Rose for Emily, which going back to my English major days, some English professor somewhere was like, I knew I'd influence you somehow making you read that story. That was a direct reference to it because it's about Walter who died, and his wife is not doing anything with the body. He died in his sleep, and she's keeping the corpse downstairs in the basement, and she's kind of not really dealing with what's happened, the death that's happened, and how her world's changed. And in some ways, it freed her. I mean, she was not living a good life with Walter. Walter was not a good person, and in other ways, he's still kind of controlling her from beyond the grave because he's there. And so Walter comes back to life when all the supernatural stuff starts happening in the forest. And I really wanted to write about, my favorite image from those stories that I wrote was him on the lawnmower trying to mow a lawn with his body like falling apart. And from like passing by, seeing it as they walked by and being like, holy crap, there's a corpse driving that lawnmower.
I remember coming in from doing a little bit of yard work, and I immediately had to message Patrick and be like, okay, he's got to do that thing where you stick your thumb over the hose to spray the water, and his thumb just pops off. Like that, we have to do that.
Oh yeah, yep. That detail made it in there. That's right. Mm-hmm. The whole theme of those stories between Marjorie and Walter was the idea of control. Because Walter was a horribly controlling husband and father to the point that his son's not even in his life anymore, and he controlled Marjorie relentlessly. And he comes back from the dead, and she thinks that she's going to be happy to see him, and she's not. She's like, my life has been so much better without you around. Ends up like basically ignoring him, his resurrected corpse, and Walter tries to kind of go about his day and like mow the lawn to prove to her that he's still like a worthy partner or something ridiculous like that. Or like he assumes that she hasn't been keeping up the lawn work, so he goes out to mow the lawn, and obviously bad things happen. So that plot was really, I really just wanted to explore the themes of control with it.
Speaking of things falling apart, as we're talking about Walter falling apart, can anyone elaborate what the deal with the cat is?
Well, I can't elaborate. That gets answered soon, though.
We just read what the deal with the cat is like days ago internally. So you don't get to know that yet.
Actually, yeah, that's true. We did, but there is a deal with the cat. Listen to the episode where the dad wakes up in the hospital again.
We had a sound cue for the cat, didn't we?
Yep.
You know why? Because I remember thinking about T.S. Eliot when I thought about coming up with something, again, abstract for the yellow fog that wraps its whatever around the you-know-what.
Oh, yeah.
The love song.
With the thing.
Yep. The love song of Jail for Proof Rock. Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, that's gone over my head too.
Well, at least two people
I always there's all these guys throughout history that have these really great fucking ideas, and I'm just not that bright, so I just rip them off as much as I possibly can. Hey, this is a good one, man. These guys could help.
That's kind of how it works. Yep.
Yeah, T.S. Eliot was guilty of that as well. I mean, great modernist poet, but he, there was plenty of material he borrowed from as well. But yeah, Love Song of Jail for Proof Rock's a really classic modernist poem. It's a good one. But what was our question again? I got to let my dog out of the bedroom.
Well, I think it's been answered.
Is he coming
What's
back
the
in
deal
here?
with the cat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the cat.
I don't think there's anything else to say.
I think we've alluded to the mystery just enough to get them to piece back to. So I think the next one is several listeners want to know what the fuck happened to the plane.
Same thing.
Go back to
it disappeared, and like we said,
what?
Nobody's.
Plane?
Yep. A plane disappeared.
Yeah.
That's what happened. You've heard of the Bermuda Triangle and stuff, right? It's the same deal.
Yeah.
I feel like I just
it's
need a
gone now.
spotlight to interrogate you
Sexy.
guys. That's what I need, like a spotlight on you. But where's the plane?
Next question's the same thing.
Yeah, what happened to the storm portrait? It's hanging up in Robert's living room currently.
I've thought about what happens to this storm portrait. I mean, we've thought about all these things, but like the storm portrait is something that we haven't actually written about or thought about as a team. But I definitely had a dream one night. I literally had a dream one night, and I dreamt that the family. Yeah, I have this vision that, that family's gone for the weekend, right? And that's the mouse thinks about that. And I imagine they come home to their house just destroyed on the inside by this thunderstorm. And it's a really funny experience to watch as a fly on the wall. These people that come in like, what the hell happened in our house? And I figure that after a day or two, they probably realize it has something to do with the painting. But in this dream, they gave it to somebody else, no. It was still the same people that had it, but they just put it outside on their patio on the wall so that it would just be weather in their backyard or something like that. But it was cool. The end. It's still in their living room. I don't know.
I think it gets sold in a yard sale, and then it affects someone else. We're just going to keep brainstorming while we're on the podcast together.
They haggle the price down to $4.15, and then it's somebody else's problem.
The little blue sticker,
It was actually Robin's idea that story is like really surrounded by dreams, because it was your idea that came to me you gave it to me to make the main character a mouse instead of just a third person narrator.
Yeah, because I'm really lazy and I don't like writing. So I'll give you all the ideas. I dreamt about the mouse.
That story's all dreams. It's a weird one.
Robin, you also gave us the picture for that episode.
Oh, yeah.
We have little title images that we use for the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
certain, depending on where you get to the podcast from, you'll see a image for each of the 10 episodes. And that was her work, but crunched down to 3 colors, because that's what I did with all of those.
Since we're on that story, and we also have Owen and Dave here, that one out of the entire first season we did with a completely different musical background. There's music playing the entire time.
Yeah, and you talk about, you're glad we don't Mickey Mouse anything. Well, I did that one at the end of few steps and then stop. I found that piece of yours that had been on my hard drive for a couple of years now, and thought, man, that lines up almost perfectly. I'm going to make it line up perfectly.
It was, you know, and it was different though. You know, it worked. You know, it was and again, that's like where if you're able to, you know, hold off on something like that, and then you can bring in something like that, it sounds so much more fresh. You know,
Episodes up until that point had very sparse. The first few episodes of season 1 were very sparse music-wise, and some of them later on had quite a bit of music in them. But yeah, that was the first to be the whole thing. That was the only one to have the whole thing. Really some upbeat, different kind of music than we used for the rest of the series.
well, you know, again, listening to it all at once was kind of cool. Again, because it does have a sort of an overall identity. Admittedly, I started on episode 2, but I already knew how episode 1 went. So after that, you know, it was just, you know, it had a flow, it had an identity. And so then when there were differences, either in transitions or even with the episode where you had music going through pretty much the whole time, or even did some Mickey Mousing there, you know, that worked. It really did. It was work because it seems that for me listening to it, it was one big thing and not an individual episode.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, it's always both. It's always you know, we'll kind of work on episodes as individual ones, but then we have put quite a bit of thought, and we've also been pretty lucky in the arrangements of, hey, these 3 feed off each other or build in this manner, and then they set up, you know, what happens with the next 3. And yeah, the rule of 3 has been good to us. We talked early on, maybe we'll have some episodes with just, you know, 1 long one, or, you know, 5 short ones. No, we really fell in love with the 3-story layout.
All right, gentlemen, we've reached the end of our questions that have been proposed by everyone. Does anyone have any final thoughts as we're closing out the episode?
Well, thanks for submitting questions to us. That was nice.
Thanks for listening in the first place.
Yeah, that especially.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
We have got some terrific feedback. We always love hearing from people who enjoy the show or have questions or suggestions or just want us to quit killing off the girls.
Yeah, definitely gotten a lot more feedback.
Love hearing it.
We've definitely gotten a lot more feedback than I've ever gotten on any other like creative project that I've been a part of. I just want to mention a couple things at least. Stay tuned for some more bonus stuff that's going to be coming out over the next few weeks. And as of today, we're recording on August 30th. So we are literally 1 month out from what we have decided is going to be the release date of season 2. It's going to be coming to you guys on September 30th. I think that's a Wednesday, which is always what we did. Wednesdays we release. So yeah, can't wait. 4 weeks. We're 60% done with the writing for season 2. So going to start recording this week, I think, right guys?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Anything
Yep.
else? Thanks to Robin for hosting.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And thanks
Thanks to Dave for joining us. We haven't got to hear from him until today.
Yeah,
that's
wonderful.
It's good to be able to hear from all of you guys too, because we really haven't had just a chance to see where, or I haven't had much of a chance to see where everybody's coming from either, and it's just really cool because it's creative. Like I said, it opens up the doors. It said there are no limits basically, and everything I learn about these guys, there are no more limits. It's really cool.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening.
Perfect.